right. I hope y'all enjoyed the break of our solitary week off because we got a triple header and it's going to come at us thick and fast. You have found the Outlap F1 podcast. This will be season 7, episode number 6. Our first stop on this triple header is the 2025 Japanese GP. And you've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight. And Cody, I feel like this is your home away from home. So a bit of a homecoming. So you're going to pull the Piastri and say you got 1/15 of Japanese blood in you this weekend?
I could trace back a ways and probably not find any, but I sure would love for it to be my home away from home. I loved it when I visited. I would love to go back and see it not in the middle of the night as we're going to do this weekend.
Yeah.
This one's high up on my list of places to visit.
But you do get to see the cherry blossoms will be in full bloom. I'm sure they will be around the track. So it's going to be a very picturesque weekend for sure. And if you have found our show, welcome along. You can find us, as always, on the newly minted Blue Sky. We are over there. X, we continue to post content there. Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and, of course, here on YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is where you would find one handle for all of those places. You can see our link tree. It'll take you to all of our great content. If you're on YouTube and you like what you're seeing and you enjoy what you're hearing, you can do us a solid and click the like button, or you can follow us along and click the subscribe button. If you're on your favorite podcasting app, a 5-star review will definitely help us out, get our content to you that much quicker. You can email the show, as always, chatnow@outlapf1.com. I am going to check to make sure that actually is forwarding to the right spot. You can always email us at our basic Gmail account, outlapf1@gmail.com as well. Outlap F1 Nation, who continues to support the show. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and, of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of what we call the hashtag Outlap F1 Nation and get the shout out and add your name to that lovely list, you can see our anchor page in our show notes. $1, $5. We will be most appreciative if you'd love to do that. What that does is help us to keep our equipment relevant as technology continues to evolve in this ever-changing world. All right. Well, if you have been under an F1 rock, we are probably the last one to announce this, but it did happen literally right as, I think, a little bit after we posted the last review episode, but not that far afterwards. So in true Outlap F1 Nation, or true Outlap F1 podcast fashion, now we're going to talk about Yuki Tsunoda replacing Liam Lawson at Red Bull from the Japanese Grand Prix and onwards, with the 24-year-old getting the nod to replace the struggling Liam Lawson after a very difficult 2 races for the gentleman from New Zealand. The quotes from Christian Horner, they've been very, very well circulated. He said, quote, "It has been difficult to see Liam struggle with the RB21 at the first 2 races, and as a result, we have collectively taken the decision to make an early switch. We came into the 2025 season with 2 ambitions: to retain the World Drivers' Championship and to reclaim the World Constructors' title, and this is purely a sporting decision. We have a, quote, duty of care to protect and develop Liam, and together we see that after such a difficult start, it makes sense to act quickly so Liam can gain experience as he continues his F1 career with Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, an environment and a team that he knows very well." Liam Lawson was very, very silent. A lot of times you see the reaction from all the drivers and all these press releases. Not until a couple of days ago when he finally broke his silence to Sky Sports on Wednesday. He said it was, quote, not something that he saw coming. The discussions we were having as well, I think we weren't really leaning in his direction. So it was definitely not something of a sort that I expected. Cody, you've got the Red Bull hat on. This is your team. What you think of all of the moves? Was it time to make a change, or was this reactionary and a little early? What you thought?
A little bit of both. Now, it's been about a week and a half since this news came out, so we've had a lot of time to think about it, process it. Heard a lot of other commentators give their opinions on what they think about this. And I think that Yuki Tsunoda probably should have been in the seat in the first place. And now we're seeing the aftermath of Red Bull trying to jump the gun on Liam Lawson and not give him enough time to literally get up to speed. And yeah, we're seeing the bad side of that. Now, I had thought that they would have given him more of a chance than 2 races. It has to be a new record for the amount of time it took for Red Bull to kick someone out of that seat. It is cursed, it seems. At least for Liam Lawson, he's not out of the sport or anything. He's going, he's switching with Yuki Tsunoda. He's going down to RB, and Red Bull's got to be hoping that he's going to rediscover himself at that team, probably over the course of the rest of this year. I don't see them switching back unless Yuki Tsunoda really, really founders at Red Bull, which I don't think is going to happen, at least not as bad as Liam Lawson did. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens now, because Red Bull's going to look kind of silly no matter what happens here, because if Yuki Tsunoda does even moderately well, it's going to make people wonder, why didn't you put him in the seat in the first place? He's been in that RB forever. And when Sergio Perez was declining in his performance, he could have tried this out sooner because he's been there and really wanted that seat. And so maybe you should have done that. And then, on the other hand, if Yuki Tsunoda performs poorly, then Red Bull looks silly in even more ways, because you're looking at, who do they have left to possibly try to put in that seat? They've got pretty much nothing. They're not going to put, and he's so new. I'm even drawing a big fat blank on his name at the moment.
Arvid Lindblad.
Oh, not even Arvid Lindblad. Who's in the other RB seat?
Oh, Hadjar. Hadjar.
Thank you. Yeah, see, Hadjar is so new to the sport. Can't even remember his name. So they're not.
Well, he's only finished one. It's okay. He's only finished 1 race. It's all right.
Yeah. They're not going to put him in the seat right now. Because if Yuki Tsunoda can't do it at this point, Red Bull's got to really go to the drawing board in more ways than one, because they have to find someone who's able to drive what is apparently a very difficult car, and there's not really anybody really that much on the market right now. They're not going to go back to Sergio Perez. I think that ship has sailed. Valtteri Bottas has got a nice test gig over at Mercedes now. Not sure that they would release him to drive the other Red Bull seat, even if Bottas really, really wanted to. You kind of don't really have a lot of options left if it comes down to Tsunoda performing poorly. So then you got to leave him in there, kind of like they did with Perez, and it starts to just get painful as the year goes on. And Red Bull has to acknowledge now that a lot of this is how they've developed the car, and Max Verstappen is just so good at driving even kind of crappy machinery that he's making that car look better than it is, and Red Bull has been ignoring that for as long as they can, and now they can't ignore it anymore because even Max says the car's shit.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like if there was a panic button, a giant red button somewhere in the Red Bull factory, it feels like it has now been pushed. There really isn't any other moves after this. This is the nuclear option, and they've now done it. I do think you're going to see, okay, Yuki Tsunoda, here's your chance. Go get him, kid. From everything he's said in the course of the last week since this has come out, I thought it's been all the right stuff. Granted, it's probably through some translators, so I don't know how real any of it is, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out the first time he gets upset on the radio, and then we're going to know. But even then, sometimes that's what gets him into his zone and can do that. So that's not even necessarily an indicator of how he's going to drive the car or become one with the car or whatever. But here's his shot. So I'm happy to see that. I feel just terrible for Liam Lawson that he got elevated so quickly, and they literally did not give him it wasn't even a real shot. It was 2 tracks he doesn't know. He's never raced at Melbourne, and he'd never raced in China before. So now you would have thought, maybe you give him at least this race. This is a track he knows very well from his Super Formula days. I could see after 3 races, I could see after this triple header, if it was still the same result, Yeah, but the other part of it is Red Bull also knows and sees what the scoreboard is doing and understands that if they want to have any shot at the constructors, they have to have the other car scoring something because it can't be Max by himself. So they were literally stuck between a rock and a hard place. And there's the thing in the Simpsons movie where Homer is literally hitting both sides of it. That was Christian Horner and Helmut Marko. They were just kind of sitting there going back and forth. If they did nothing, they were going to, I think you're right. There's a critique that you could do from whatever they were going to do. Because one, Lawson wasn't producing, so you could just continue to criticize that choice. If you make the move, yeah, you're right. They can criticize it if this goes bad. If it works, it is kind of the equivalent of sending a promising young pitcher back down to the minor leagues to work out his issues and possibly come back. The question is Red Bull actually going to be willing at some point to take Lawson back into that seat if he is pulling his weight in the RB car, which is, according to what everybody has said, a far easier car to drive. Let's hope that he has a good weekend this weekend. He's got to get on the board points-wise. I feel like it's got to be now or it's really panic time. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Not something I saw coming. I did not think they were going to make the change after 2 races, but here we are. We got to roll with what we got. So it will be fun to watch. There will be eyes on the Red Bull cars all weekend. And not just because there's a Japanese guy in the car, but also because that car's going to look really freaking good on the grid this weekend. Their special white livery for the Japanese Grand Prix to honor the Honda legacy and akin back to the good old BAR Honda days looks damn good. For all the special liveries that come and go, and sometimes we don't really have a lot to say about it, I think you're going to like this one. If you have not seen it, I would highly recommend going to Google it or find it on your favorite social media, get a high-res picture of it, download it, maybe put it as your background because I'm not even a Red Bull guy, and I think that's a damn sexy-looking car. Cody, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, the white livery that was run by Red Bull at the race that would have been the Japanese Grand Prix on the calendar back in 2021 was very popular. I have a nice little die cast of it now because it is so cool. And when I saw the images released of this livery, the white, red, black, I kind of was sitting there at the office going, "Whoo, it looks beautiful." So I'm hoping that the special Japan-inspired livery, along with this being Yuki Tsunoda's home race, his first time out in the Red Bull, I'm hoping that this is all going to give him just that little extra boost that he needs. Who knows? Maybe even Honda is going to say, why don't you just turn up the engines just a little bit for this one to make it look really good in our last time in your car in Japan, because this is the last year that Honda badge is going to be on the Red Bull car, because they're going to go team up with Aston Martin starting next year. So I'm sure they want to get as much positive publicity out of this as possible. And yeah, I'm hoping that gives them that boost.
Well, we shall see. I will tell you this. It's going to look awfully good going around that track. The only question is going to be, do we get it mixed up with the Racing Bulls just on TV as they're flashing by? It may be one of those. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Alpine made a special livery and it looked like just as the car would whiz by, like a McLaren did for a weekend there. And I was like, you got to recalibrate your eyes a little bit to figure them out, but we'll do it. But like I said, the renderings that I have seen, and kudos to the Red Bull social media team for giving you the right angles. I thought it looked really good. At least
they should have done like a tag team with RB to do like a throwback Toro Rosso.
There you go.
Inspired livery or something, so that you don't get them mixed up on the track.
I've said it forever. I think if you actually open sourced some of the liveries, I think the fans would come up with amazing stuff. There are so many good digital designers out there. And it looked like they actually kind of listened to some of them with this one. So I am positive on the Red Bull livery for sure this weekend. All right. Speaking of another driver who is under some pressure, Jack Doohan has been replaced by Ryo Harakawa at Alpine for FP1. Just an FP1, but Jack Doohan, who needs track time, it's an interesting decision that all of a sudden he's missing out on the third race of the season. Granted, you have to give the young a non-rookie driver at least some time in a car to satisfy the regulations, but it's interesting that it comes at the third race of the season. But I'm sure there's commercial applications for Ryo Harakawa to be in the car at Suzuka. Makes probably good sense. Cody, what's your take on Doohan having to give his seat up in a valuable free practice session?
I think that it's a combination of Alpine not really having full faith in Doohan and the timing. Normally, we don't see the young drivers come in to do their practice sessions until later on in the season. But Ryo Hirakawa, this would be his home turf as well, so I'm sure he'll feel really happy to be taking place in a Formula One session in Japan. I think he's going to be really happy about that. And as you said, there's going to be a whole bunch of publicity around that. So it's just taking advantage of the situation, I think, is the main side of it, taking place of the timing. That said, if they really did have a lot of faith in Doohan's development, even if it was good timing, they wouldn't be doing it. They would be doing in the car. So yeah, it's a little bit of both, and it's lending to the belief that Doohan's not going to make it to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is the spotlight is going to shift, because unfortunately he does not have Liam Lawson to hide behind anymore. So yeah, it never felt like the greatest situation for a guy who I thought was having a pretty good F2 season last year, and I still want to see. I think it's gotten better over the course of the first two races. I just think that he's a rookie driver, and that's what you're going to expect. You got to give these guys some ramp time. They don't just sit in the car and then suddenly be able to do it. No matter how much simulator work they can do or all the other stuff, there is still nothing like being in an F1 car, which makes it interesting to me that they take an hour of his practice time away early on. It just seems a little odd, but we'll follow it. We'll see if there's anything that comes out of it. But yeah, Ryo Harakawa, second time I think he's been in F1 machinery. I think he did an FP1 for McLaren a couple of years ago as well. All right, so we actually had a listener question. Thank you very much to Jamie Street, who DM'd the show. You can always do that through all of our social media platforms, and hopefully if I can find those DMs, I will definitely try to get your questions into the show. So we appreciate the reach out here. His question is, quote, "This has been bugging me for the last few weeks. How would qualifying work next year with 22 cars, since, we have Cadillac joining the grid? Do we lose the first 7 in Q1? And then his other comment is, looking forward to the Japanese Grand Prix preview podcast. It's looking like we could have a wet one. We will talk in our next segment about the weather and all of that, and it does look like weather will play a factor like it tends to do when we go to Japan. So I can kind of take the question about how qualifying is going to work. So there is precedent for this. I think back in 2012, we were running with 22 cars, which is exactly what we're going to have. And what they did was Q3 will always continue to be 10. So what they're going to do is then, instead of eliminating the slowest 5 in the first 2 rounds, what they will do is they'll eliminate the slowest 6. So we'll go from 22 down to 16, down from 16 to 10. So it'll move the line 1 car down in terms of who can make it. So yeah, we will eliminate the slowest 6 drivers in Q1, and then the next slowest 6 drivers in Q2. I don't think they're going to change any of the timings. I think that the sessions are still supposed to be the same, provided that they don't futz with any of the qualifying format or do anything else to it between now and the end of the season. As far as I know, we are with the Concord agreement signed and all the teams on board. It looks like we're going to have kind of the same continuous knockout qualifying that we've always had on a non-sprint weekend. So, and even on a sprint weekend, we would still have the same session. But obviously, in sprint qualifying, it would still work the same way with the mandatory medium tires in the first 2 rounds, and then they would all switch to the soft tires. But beyond the tire thing, the actual number of drivers eliminated is just going to increase from 5 to 6.
I kind of wonder if they'd have to change any of the like times of the sessions though for the sprint qualifying, because aren't those the sprint qualifying sessions are pretty short, and I'm not sure how much 2 extra cars being on the grid is really going to make a difference with, like crowding up the track. I don't think it'll be too big an issue. However, if they add on, say, like another team, they might have to start looking at stuff like that. Like, hey, there's not really enough time for everyone to get out there and get like a couple runs in.
Well, they didn't want, when they first designed the sprint qualifying, the intent was not to have 2 runs. The teams have figured it out, and they've figured out the timings on how to do that. The idea was only supposed to be 1 run on the tire. It was supposed to be an out lap, a warm up, and then maybe a go, and that was supposed to be it. What the teams have figured out, because they hire these engineers that figure out how to do timing, and they can add time and distance like you couldn't believe. Figured out a way to kind of get both runs, so it feels just like a compressed standard qualifying session, with a lot of times most teams getting a couple runs in, but not all of them necessarily do that. So it's kind of preference and feel, and you're kind of up against it anyway in a sprint qualifying format, because you only had the 1 hour, and on a track like the China track was last week or last time out, where it was evolving so rapidly and so quickly, you could easily, that's the whole point. They want to have some variability. They want to see some mixed up grids, at least in the sprint part of it, and then maybe a return to normal, kind of like what we saw exactly kind of play out in China. So I think they're getting what they want out of it, at least at this point. I don't, and I'm fine. Like I said, as long as you keep the kind of the sprint weekends to the 4 or 5 that we have, I think that's enough. But I don't want to see it all the time. Like, I know MotoGP does it all the time, and it feels weird, and it feels like the qualifying doesn't get the same treatment like it does in F1. But anyway, thank you very much, Jamie, for the question. I will also look into the tech issue with the Chat Now email address, so I will get back to you on that as well. Last thing before we hop into our Japanese GP proper is a topic that we haven't really talked about, because it's been a lot of rumor. There's been some talk about it, but it is suddenly gaining steam, and it seems like it's now kind of become a legit question. We've already adopted the 2026 engine rules, so we thought. And what it kind of started was it felt to me like it was the president of the FIA, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, reaching for straws to say, my God, I have to find something popular to get behind. And he comes out and says, V10 engines with sustainable fuels, that's the direction we should go in. And as a fond memory of the V10 screaming engines, I say yes to that. Even if it comes out of Mohammed Ben Sulayem's mouth, I would say, okay, fine. But it seems like instead of just a concept, it feels like it's gained a lot of momentum. I think there are a lot of like-minded fans out there that tend to miss the old screamy engines. I'm with you on that one. But there's even been some talk of, should we ditch the 26 rules, even though we're a year out? Should we kind of keep these cars for another couple of years and just extend everything out to 2028 and then try to, reformulate and come up again? So it's a big debate kind of out there in the ether right now. And Cody, I'll let you kind of take the lead. What do you think the good, the bad, and maybe some of the ugly would be?
Yeah, it is kind of funny how quickly this has evolved recently. It's kind of gone from, over the past bunch of years, fans being like, bring back the V10s, and everyone who's watching sport being like, yeah, that would be cool, but it's probably never going to happen, to, as you said, Mohammed Ben Sulayem trying to find something popular so that he gets reelected as FIA president later this year, and says, yeah, that would be really cool if we brought back the V10s with sustainable fuel so that it does pertain to the evolving landscape of road vehicles. And yeah, now it has gained this crazy traction where apparently people have been going around. They've sent people around to the different teams asking, like, hey, how would you actually feel about this? And it's gone from, is this something we should look at, to, is this something that we should look at sooner? Like, should we shorten the duration for these new engine regs to should we abandon these new engine regs altogether. I think a lot of that comes from a cost-saving side of things. Developing a non-hybrid powertrain is going to be a lot cheaper. If you're just doing an internal combustion engine, V8, V10, whatever, it's going to be cheaper. It's going to be, easier to work on. You can decide if you want to have turbochargers or not. You're going to really have that scream come back if you do just without the turbocharger, but you could get maximum power if you keep the turbocharger around and just get rid of the hybrid side of it. I think a lot of it comes from concern about performance as well. We always tout F1 as being the pinnacle of motorsport. It's supposed to be the highest performing vehicles that there are for racing. And I think there's a lot of worry that the 50-50 split between the internal combustion engine and the hybrid side of the powertrain is not going to give that peak performance that we expect to see out of Formula One. Apparently in tests, there was a lot of issues with battery power, not making it as far as they wanted, even just over the course of a single lap, issues with draining the battery. I guess that is also a big part of why they have pursued this active aero to try to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that I think is very cool. I'm on your side. I think it would be really cool to bring back, even if it's not V10s, even if you just go back to the V8s that they were using for the current hybrid powertrains. Those were pretty popular, and they still sounded really cool. And I never got to hear them in person, so I would love to see that. I'm sure the teams would love getting a bigger profit out of, not having as much money invested. But the fact of the matter is you lured in teams like, Audi and GM, who, especially with Audi, a whole big part of the reason that we're going with these new hybrid powertrains is because Audi said they wanted something that pertained to road cars technology that was pretty much put in place to get them into the sport. So if you pull back on that too quickly, they're going to go, what the hell? Why did we invest all this money into coming into Formula One and building our own engines if we're just going to get rid of these engines after a couple of years and go back to something we didn't want anyway? I feel like they have to at least run these engines for a few years to, warrant the investment that was put into them. I don't think we're going to see the engines that we're expecting to see next year just completely drop off the map. I think we're going to see them for at least a few years. If the racing is not as interesting, they're going to speed up development to something else, which hopefully will be just plain Jane ICU. And they'll have to go from there. It's all going to be based on what we see out of these cars next year. I think that they're going to still stick with the new engines as planned, and if the racing ends up sucking, then they're going to put something else on the fast track.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think they've proposed this too late in the game, and the problem is we are so far down the line on the 2026 regs. We almost are. It feels like we are in the poker world. We would say pot committed at this point. We are so pot committed to this. We have to at least let it run a little bit to kind of see where we are, because we have invested so much time and effort, and to just throw that off to the side. If we were in 2023 and having these discussions, then maybe I would say that this thing has some legs and some tracks, and maybe we could get it embedded and there could be a movement, and maybe we could actually try to turn some heads and see what happens. The other issue is Mercedes have come out and have basically said, even if we were to try to keep the engines that we know how to make, we don't have the resources to keep supplying these teams, because we've already stopped the assembly lines on the current engines, other than like spare parts and stuff, to try to retrofit those assembly lines to go backwards to what we have now would take. You'd be running into mid of next year, and there'd be 3 other teams on the grid who would have no engines. So that's a problem. So we're going to see the 2026 regs. The question is going to be, if, like you said, the racing doesn't look good or the cars are horribly slow, do you see a fast track of like the development token system come back in? Or we've got to make that is struggling so far. Like if Ford comes in and Red Bull are not looking well, or if Audi come in and they are not looking well, and it's all Mercedes power in the first 10 spots every weekend, nobody wants to see that. So what you'll probably see is a start of that and then a snapback to say, okay, well, we will accelerate development a lot like what they're doing with MotoGP and Honda. Look at where Honda's bikes have fallen in the last maybe 3 years since the Ducatis in MotoGP have become the dominant force. But you know what MotoGP did that was pretty smart? They let Honda do the extra development, extra test time, extra dyno work, extra resources. Suddenly, this season, they're not back to the front, but they're not the laughing stock of what they were a couple of years ago, at least in the MotoGP world. So you're seeing at least a commitment to some parity. I think that's, as long as we kind of can get to that point, I don't think at the end of the day, Dominicali and the folks at Liberty and even the FIA really care how they get there, but that's what they want to see. It's just a question of how do we get there. And I do think we are so late in it, even though I would love, I've said this from a long time. I said, if hydrogen fuel could work, let's fit a hydrogen cell onto a V10 engine and let them rip. That's what I want as a fan. I don't think we're going to get it, unfortunately. But it's a very interesting topic. It did get my antenna went high when I saw that, but I don't see logistically a way to get it there, unfortunately. So kind of frustrating, but interesting topic. And if there is progress on it, we will obviously continue to follow the story and we will bring it to you as we learn it. All right, so we are going to take a quick break. We will re-rack. We're going to come back. We're going to hop into our Japanese GP proper. We will answer Jamie's second question about, do we have potentially a wet race? We'll get into our track facts. We'll get into our stats. We'll get into the weather. And then we're going to take a stab at what we think is going to happen over the weekend. And then we'll tell you where and when you can find your F1 this weekend. I hope you like burning the midnight oil. It's going to be another late/early one if you're in the U.S. So come on back. We'll tell you all about it in just a bit. All right, welcome back on in. This is our season 7, episode number 6 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2025 Japanese GP preview show, the first of our first triple header of the season. And you've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight. And we just wrapped up the news section. A lot of Red Bull stories in the news. It is a track that they have dominated at. So, Cody, why don't you tell us about the Japanese GP? Our track facts are brought to us by the good folks at Pirelli Motorsport. So, Cody, tell us about the Suzuka International Racing Course.
All right. This weekend, we are going to Suzuka International Racing Course located in Suzuka, Japan. Number of laps around the track for the Grand Prix is going to be 53, and the length of the track is 5.807 kilometers. That's 3.608 miles. And it consists of 18 turns. The tire selection from Pirelli for this race is going to be the C1 for the hard, C2 for medium, and C3 for the soft compound. And their track characteristics, all out of 5, are going to be a 3 for traction, a 4 for asphalt grip, a 4 for asphalt abrasion, a 3 for track evolution, a 5 for tire stress, a 2 for braking, a 5 for lateral load, and a 4 for downforce. The qualifying lap record was set by Sebastian Vettel back in 2019 with a 1 minute 27.064 seconds, while the race lap record was set in that same year but by Lewis Hamilton with a 1 minute 30.983 seconds. Most wins at any track for the Japanese Grand Prix, so that is including Suzuka and Fuji Speedway. Yep. Most wins at any Japanese Grand Prix is going to be Michael Schumacher with a whopping 6 wins, followed by Lewis Hamilton with 5, and then Sebastian Vettel with 4. And most constructor wins is going to go to McLaren, who's probably hoping they can add on to their tally of 9 this weekend. Ferrari is in second with 7 wins, and then it's a tie between Mercedes and Red Bull with 6 wins apiece. What's the circuit like, Andy?
All right. Well, you can show us a racing driver who doesn't love Suzuka, and we'll show you a liar. The high-speed track remains one of the ultimate driving challenges with the snaking S-curves, the 2 commitment rewarding Degners. So I re-rack the sound here. There we go. And the white-knuckle ride of 130R. All of those highlight a series of what is one of the F1's most seminal and historic tracks. And hey, it's got a crossover. So you got cars on top of the other. That's always cool, right? All right, so as for our weather, and as we hinted in our previous segment, weather could be a factor this weekend. So for the Friday/Saturday, depending on where you are in the world, that could be when you're going to actually watch the qualifying. It's going to be cloudy, high near 60 degrees Fahrenheit, so a little bit on the cool side. Winds out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10, a scant 4% chance of rain. However, that changes come Sunday because there is expected to be showers in the morning, then potentially partly cloudy in the afternoon. When does the rain stop? That's going to be the question of the day. High of 64, winds will be light and variable, but a 70% chance of rain for Sunday. So it definitely looks like we could potentially see intermediate tire yet again.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get into that sweet spot with the rain here, because Japan is one of those races where it's like either it can be a fun wet race or it can be a really shitty wet race where it's delayed by a couple hours and then you only get like half the race in before they call it and all that stuff. So
we don't want a typhoon or a hurricane or that, or even what we saw in Melbourne. I think that was way too much rain. But if we can see the drying part where we get to the transition from, let's say, intermediates to slicks and a dry line forming that makes everybody, have to drive inch perfect, that could be interesting to watch. And then you're going to see multiple pit stops. When do people change the tires? What's the right time to go in? All of that could definitely shake things up. It certainly did in Melbourne. So we will have to see kind of, again, when does the rain stop? I think is going to be the question of the weekend on Sunday. All right. So we are going to hop into our predictions as to what we think is going to happen over the course of the weekend. And we shall start with the pole sitter. The 2024 pole sitter was Max Verstappen, as he was still kind of on his roll in the early part of the 24 season. So again, Cody, I ask, do you expect a repeat performance, or do we have another potential challenger in the mix here? What you got?
I really want it to be a repeat performance. I think this type of track, I think Suzuka probably suits the Red Bull as well as any track is going to right now. And Max Verstappen is really good at qualifying, but it just looks like the performance of the McLaren is too strong right now compared to them. So I actually think we're going to see Lando Norris come back swinging and get a pole.
Yeah, all right, very good. I'm in agreement with you. I'm going to take Lando Norris for the pole. There was a little quote that Andrea Stella said to Ted Kravitz as they were packing up, when he basically kind of said, the China track didn't really suit us, but we know Suzuka does. And I kind of look at the profile of this track and what I know that McLaren car does well, and I say, hello, this one could be really fun. So is it going to be Norris or is it going to be Piastri? That's the question. I think here, just because of the technical nature of this track, I think it suits Lando a little bit better than it does Oscar. If Lando can avoid the mistakes, I think he's got a good shot at it, so I'm taking him for pole as well. All right, so our qualifying pole lap time from last year was a 1:28.197. That was set by the aforementioned Max Verstappen. I'm going to take this one first. I do think we're going to go faster. I'm going to try to stay ahead of this. We're hopefully not going to completely botch this like we did in China, where we were 3 seconds a lap slower. If it stays dry, I do think we're going to go faster. I don't think we're going to go a ton faster, but we are definitely trending faster this season. So I've got a 1:27.687. Cody, it looks like you even gone a bit faster than me. So what you got?
I was a little embarrassed by my predictions for China. So yeah, I'm going to go even faster. And watch, now it's going to rain somehow on Saturday. I'm going to go with a 1:27.555 seconds.
All right, very good. We will enter that and we'll see if those come to fruition. All right, so turning the page to Sunday, and it could be anything. Last year's podium was Max Verstappen taking the win. Wow, what a difference a year makes. Sergio Perez made it a Red Bull 1-2, coming home in second. Carlos Sainz came home for Ferrari in P3. Do we have any of those protagonists on the podium this year? I think we'll at least have one of them. So, Cody, what you got?
I am hoping we're going to see one of them, and I'm actually hoping we're going to see him at the top. I'm going a little bit fanboy here, and I'm going to go Max Verstappen getting the win because I'm trying to take that wet weather into account. He is really good in the wet. Now, I might eat my words a little bit because Lando Norris also was really, really good in the wet in Melbourne. But you look at the difference between China, which was dry, and how far Lando finished ahead of Max, or would have had he not had problems, compared to the Melbourne race where they were right on top of each other at the end. So I'm thinking that Max might just be able to take advantage of that here. I'm going with Max gets the win, Piastri comes in second, and Lando Norris comes in third.
All right, very good. I get your point on, I think Max is really good around this track. There is no denying that. I think this is a track that suits, generally, I think the Red Bull package a little bit better. But as I also said, I think it suits the McLaren package pretty good too. I think that you're going to see when they go good at one, they're going to tend to kind of follow the other. I do think Max is going to wring something special out of this car this weekend because he knows he's got to produce it now. And they all know that. They're definitely feeling the pressure. However, I do think Lando he's going to make it interesting. I guarantee you it is not going to be straightforward 20-second victory here. But I'm going to say Lando gets the win. I'm going to got Max coming in second, and I got Oscar Piastri doing a double McLaren podium in P3. And not that far behind them, I think, will be the two Ferraris, and then don't forget about George Russell. So just because I don't have anybody in the podium doesn't mean that they're not going to be in the mix. They will definitely play a factor this weekend for sure. All right, so our fastest lap and driver, even though there's no bonus point for it, we still award a point for it in our predictions. The 2024 fastest lap time, Max Verstappen took it, a 1:33.706. Cody, what you got here, and who do you got doing it?
Well, now I'm starting to think about the rain and that my prediction makes absolutely no sense unless it dries out. So now I'm hoping it dries out because I'm not changing my prediction. I've got Lando Norris setting the fastest lap, and I've got him doing it with a 1 minute 33.001. So that's like 0.6 faster than last year. Hopefully Lando can do something special on a dry line to make that happen.
Well, and the question is going to be, like I said, it could be 70% is, I love when I read that in the weather. It means it's going to rain at some point during the day. If if it rains at 10 in the morning and the race is at 2, it very well easily could be completely dry by then. But it would mean at least a green track, and at least there would be definitely some evolution going on. That said, I'm going to say that it's going to be dry, at least for part of it. But I think Lewis Hamilton will set the fastest lap, and he's going to do it with a 1:33.158 is what I've got for a prediction there. All right, so turning the table to our bonus picks, we have selected P4, P7, and P9. I like these positions. Cody, what you got here for our bonus picks?
I've got George Russell coming in P4. He has performed very well so far, coming on the podium in both of the first two races. I'm hoping Max does well here, and that means that Russell is going to just miss out on the podium. I've got Fernando Alonso making a big comeback after retiring from the first two races to get some decent points, finishing in 7th. And then I've got Alex Albon coming in 9th place, continuing to look like the stronger of the two, at least for now, at Williams.
All right, very good. So for P4, I'm going to give that, like I said, I think the Ferraris are going to be right there into the mix here. So I'm going to go Charles Leclerc. Just based kind of on experience at this point. Nothing against Lewis Hamilton, but he's still clearly getting acclimated still to the car, and he should have time to do that. P7, here's where I'm going to give the local boy, Yuki Tsunoda. Red Bull will get double points for the first time this season. That's my prediction. I think he's going to do a decent job. I don't know that it'll be everything a Red Bull wants, but it's going to be a lot better than what they've been getting. So I've got Yuki Tsunoda coming home in P7 and a strong performance there. And for P9, I'm going to give this, I can't believe I'm actually predicting this, Lance Stroll, who has been the bannerman for Aston Martin this season. I think they've made that car a little better for him. Fernando not necessarily coming to grips with it just yet, but it seems to suit Lance pretty good. So I think he's going to come home again in the points. All right. So for our prop bet this weekend, we had a lot of potentials. We could have done the whole, does Yuki Tsunoda get on the podium? Does Team Japan?
Oh, that would be
a thing.
Long shot.
Well, we could do the whole Team Japan thing, but we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to put any more pressure on Yuki because, he's got enough to deal. So we thought it would kind of be interesting. With this potential changeable weather condition, do we see both the rain and the dry tires potentially on Sunday? So again, the question for me is going to be, when does the rain stop? And that I don't think we know for sure yet. So Cody, what you got for this one?
I'm going to go with yes. It's really just a gut feeling based on what the forecast is and the fact that we've seen almost 2 partially wet races. It was supposed to almost rain at the last couple laps there in China. Probably wouldn't have gotten wet enough to throw on any sort of wet weather tires, but it poured in Australia. So yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think we'll probably still have a wet track in the morning, and it'll progress to a dry line as the day goes on.
All right, very good. I have a funny feeling, just the way that I read at least the weather forecast, it feels like it's going to be wet definitely in the morning, and I think it may dry out. Now the question is, does the sky break and allow the sun to come out, and that'll definitely help it dry? Or if it does it hang like it can do kind of in Japan, where it kind of turns into a fog type thing? If that's the case, my prediction is going to be wrong, because I'm going to say no, but I'm definitely aware that I could be very, very wrong on this one. So the race fan in me kind of hopes that I am wrong on this one, because I think it'd be pretty cool to watch the transition from wet to dry happen in Japan on Sunday. All right. So before we hop on out, we just wanted to give you guys, everybody in the U.S., the heads up on when and where you can watch your sessions this weekend. All F1 sessions obviously available on over F1 TV. If you are so inclined to subscribe, highly would recommend to do that. Their stream has been nothing but great throughout the course of the first couple rounds, and I don't anticipate any issues moving forward with them. So that's how I'll be consuming it. But if you are on your ESPN family of networks, they offer also some traditional cable options and some streaming options. So FP1 kicks off Thursday if you're in the USA, 10:25 p.m. Eastern. So some prime time F1 if you are so inclined. ESPN News or ESPN Plus, and if you are a subscriber to the Disney Plus ESPN bundle, you can watch FP1 as well. I was shocked to kind of see that, but it's there. FP1 available on Disney Plus as well. FP2 kicks off 1:55 a.m. Eastern, so a little bit of late night Thursday night, maybe a thirsty Thursday. Have your fancy, watch some practice, then go to bed and try to get up for Friday. ESPN2 will be your home for that if you want to catch that live. FP3 will happen Friday evening, 10:25 p.m. Eastern. Again, ESPN News, ESPN Plus, and the Disney Plus options are yours for the taking. Qualifying will kick off 1:55 a.m. Eastern on Saturday morning. So again, if you're laid out on a Friday night, catch some qualifying, stay on up. It's worth it. I swear, ESPN2 is your home for that. And the race kicks off 1 a.m. Eastern on Big ESPN. There also will be some rebroadcasts of the race. If you're not crazy enough to want to do it in the middle of the night, I get that. Check out ESPN News 3. I think it's usually like 3 o'clock Central, and then another one usually around 8 or 9 Central. So good opportunities to catch all of your sessions this weekend. F1 TV is of course on demand. They literally post the entire session 5 minutes after it ends. So they are great about getting that up. And if you happen to miss it live, it's a great way to catch up and stay off of social media while you're doing that. All right. So we will be back on Sunday night to recap all of this. But Cody, any final thoughts? I didn't get a chance to go with you guys when you guys went to Japan. I always kind of felt a little jealous because of it. But so I always try to channel, and I think if I was going, what would I be looking for? So kind of tell us a little bit about the climate if you kind of know.
the climate, like the literal climate, because this time of year is going to be
very different from
way
what you
nicer
had.
than when I was there. When I was there, it was hot as hell, like hot and humid. It's probably still going to be humid, honestly. This is actually what I would like to see. Like, I would love to go this time of year because there's the cherry blossoms and they're supposed to be beautiful. And you see, I could kind of twist my wife's arm and be like, hey, we go to Japan, we go in the spring, we'll get to see the cherry blossoms, it won't be so hot, and by the way, we can take a little trip down to Suzuka, hop on the bullet train from Tokyo. Yeah, that actually sounds like a fantastic vacation to me. I loved my travel to Japan. We are actually planning on going back next year. I don't think it'll be this time of year, unfortunately, so I probably will have to delay my dream of seeing the Suzuka race a little longer. But yeah, this is a great track to watch. Drivers love it. It's a very fast track. Lots of cool turns. This is one of my favorite tracks to drive on racing video games.
Yep.
Honestly, this one in Spa. And yeah, I'm hoping it's an exciting one because the Japan race can be a little hard to pass at. So it's kind of, you either get a really, really good race or you get kind of a really, really boring race. So I'm hoping, again, that it is the former.
Well, yeah, we are going to see. And like I said, we will be back on Sunday to recap it all and all of the fallout from round number 3 of our Formula One season. So for Cody, it's been Andy. Like I said, we'll catch you on Sunday night. And as always, folks, may all your laps be fast.